Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Radio Free Wall Street. Oh, my God, what a day. We have got markets that are just topsy-turvy. Oh, you can see it by the swings we're getting in these markets nowadays. And the Dow closed, in spite of everything, down 54 points. And what you are seeing is confusion. Let me give you an example. Donald Trump ran on the fact that it was ridiculous that the Medicare system did not negotiate with drug companies for the massive amounts of drugs they buy. And it makes sense. Why would you not negotiate price with them, okay? I mean, especially when you got a president's the art of the deal. So Donald Trump then has a meeting with drug companies. Drug companies were very concerned, by the way, and drug stocks had sold off when that initial discussion took place. And obviously profit be taken out of them, and they could force better prices for the huge buying power of government and have these various companies that produce similar drugs compete with each other, right? Well, that's the last thing the drug companies wanted, and when Donald Trump finally came up with the new deal, there was no negotiation with Medicare, and they promised to do a great job in giving the best price they could. No negotiation. So what we've learned with Donald Trump is that the trade discussions or the negotiations that he originally talks about become a much different animal when they're done. Now, that's important to a market. Okay, I'll give you another example. We heard all the uproar with the steel, right? Nucor was excited. They went to the White House. The president of the company said, listen, we're going to pay our guys at least $1,500 more a year. We're going to give a $1,000 bonus as soon as these sanctions go in. They were there for the signing, the photo opportunity. I mean, they all had new uniforms on, new shoes. It was probably the biggest day of their lives. They all had haircuts, and I mean, they flew over to Washington, D.C. in the White House. How cool is that? In the Oval Office, right? Well, Donald Trump made it very clear that it was be impossible to negotiate with every single thing. So he's putting a blanket prohibition on imports and leveling the playing field, right? He's just going to stop the steel imports and put a tax on them. Tax on everybody. Because he was right. If you just stop the steel from coming in from Korea, well, then they'll slip it in through India. And if China wants to get the steel in, it'll go through Mexico or through Panama or through Canada. So, in other words, importing steel has this ceiling price on it. This is the import duty, right? Made a lot of sense. What happened? Waivers. Now every country is negotiating a waiver. Everyone's been granted something. Nucor did not pay its employees the bonus, did not increase its production, did not put on another shift. Why? It never happened. It never happened. The deal never happened. Then we were talking about the farmers got all excited that Donald Trump was going to stop the unfair practices. I'm sure you remember the TV show with the dairy farmer going, well, there's hardly any money in the business now. Canada orders are down. We're going out of business up here in Iowa. Remember that Wisconsin guy? Well, you notice he's not on the news anymore. Well, what happened? They never got the price. And then, remember sorghum and wheat and all that, the grains, and all of a sudden China's putting duties on that coming into their country. So what is happening is we're hearing a lot of blow and go. It really, really sounds good. Make America great. Okay, coal mines and steel mills and factories. And Donald Trump is going to demand content, right? It's got to be, if it's going to be a car made in Mexico, it's got to be made with American parts. Sounds goddamn reasonable to me, right? 100% made in USA parts. Well, how about 90, 78, 76? Now what's happened is negotiations fall apart, arguing about percentages. And it becomes a far different deal than it was. I thought the factory was going to come back to America, and now it becomes an issue about content of parts. And last time I looked, I didn't see a dashboard had a passport, okay, or identity card. I think it'd be very interesting how they solve that problem. So as we're moving down the road, we're hearing all this blow and go, okay? We're going to sanction China for the trillions of dollars they've taken. Great. How are you doing that? Well, you make it open up the markets. Well, how does that exactly happen? What does America able to sell into the markets that's not selling now? And you remember the phone company. Well, Donald Trump went in there and he said, listen, I'm teaching this phone company. They're evil, and they didn't obey the sanctions against North Korea, and they've been doing business with Iran, who I'm pissed off at. And Donald Trump talked about putting huge sanctions against this company. You remember that, right? The company said, well, listen, with these kind of sanctions, we're going out of business. Donald Trump said, I don't give a shit. You guys have been unfair trade practices. The federal government won't allow the phones into the buildings Most carriers won't allow your phones on the network because you're stealing our technology, spying on our citizens. This is another great example of the art of the deal, right? So, so ZTE Corporation said, well, listen, we're going to go out of business. Then all of a sudden, the howling herd, as companies that supply them, went ahead and said, wait a minute, whoa. The U.S. companies sell a lot of components to this company, and, what's going to happen to that? And the jobs lost in America. Now, you would think a man like the President of the United States would have a file and understand what the ramifications are, went to his people and said, listen, I'm going to put the sanctions against ZTE, it's a Chinese-based company, and what exactly does this ramifications for U.S. companies, okay? Well, basically the phones are brought into America. They're not sold on U.S. military bases, I might add, and the telephones are sold through Best Buy and AT&T, and so all of a sudden the howl was heard. Oh, my God, number 3 headset maker, okay? And all of a sudden we backed away and said, well, okay, because Lee is my friend in China, I'm going to go ahead and give him a way out, okay? Well, wait. I thought China was our enemy. And what about U.S. jobs? And all of a sudden, another really tough-sounding sanction was completely thrown out the door. You sit there kind of stunned and go, wait a minute, that's Chinese companies. They're spying. Technology is based on what they stole from American companies, and you said that you were putting them out of business, and now you're not? He actually said he was worried about the job losses in China. And people were like, what about the jobs in America? President Ching Chong of China or President Ding Dong of the United States? Which job is it? So we keep going down this road where more and more of these sanctions come up. And, you hear all these great proclamations of how this is going to be the deal of the deal of the deal. The art of the deal, okay? An American manufacturers no longer be treated like shit, and they're going to have the competitive advantage, and frankly, they're very badly negotiated deals. We have North Korea says it didn't cancel its nuclear test site. Of course, the test site is already a nuclear waste dump, and so sounds like he's trying to get rid of a problem. And on it goes, okay? And all of a sudden, you wake up and you go, these trade deals are not happening. We are pissing people off. And then we're backing away. Businesses don't know what to do. It gets uglier and uglier and uglier. So what is the lesson to be learned? Well, the lesson is you just don't really know what Donald Trump's going to do. He shoots from the hip. And a lot of times we don't know what the deal is. Is it going to be sanctions? Not going to be sanctions. And a great example is the oil market's now on its ear, which is a great deal for us because it's not going to stay there. And oil is now at, $71.70 a barrel. I mean, it's had a nice little moonshot. And it's based on sanctions again, right? Well, you got Venezuela down there. That production is falling. Why? Well, they're under crippling sanctions. They can't get spare parts in there. U.S. companies can't do business there. It's a big-ass mess. Now, they got an election coming up on the 20th, and we'll see how that happens. And basically, it's an agenda on do we want to be socialist or we want to be something else. And you have a lot of poor people that believe in that socialist dream because they have nothing. So socialism is basically the way the poor people get away, even with the capitalists, is the way I always looked at it. But so that's one issue. Now you got, so Venezuela has crippling sanctions, and Russia has gone in there and loaned the money. So has China. And it'll be very interesting to see what happens with those sanctions and how they play out. Okay? Now you got a situation that you've got a recent deal, and that is that Donald Trump has announced in 6 months, that's 6 months, by the way, not now, that sanctions will be put against Iranian oil companies. And to make sure there's no cheating, Donald Trump has let it be known through Treasury Department that they're going to go ahead and they're also going to get any export infrastructure. In other words, if a boat is involved in the shipping, moving the oil, then that shipping company will be sanctioned and not be able to do business with the United States. If it is an insurance company that's insuring that cargo, well, then the insurance company will be sanctioned. And if it's a bank or finance company or what the entity is, the finance, the shipping, issuing the letter of credits and all that, they'll be punished. So we're going down this road that, how big are the sanctions going to be? How bad? Well, you've got major multi-billion-dollar investments right now by U.S. oil companies. They were a little more cautious, but let me tell you, the Europeans have run in there with both feet. Why? Well, there's a vast amount of oil to be had in Iran, and it's huge. Okay, so it's the oil is easy to get at. The fields are there for the taking. Iran was joining back the family of nations, but Donald Trump was right. You know, they're the biggest state sponsor of terrorism. They've got a rocket program. They've got a nuclear program. They've got the war in Yemen. There are all kinds of mischief, you know, all over the world, you know, with their jihad, the religious fanatics. Okay, all valid. But the question is, how do you deal with it? Now there's been pushback because the Chinese aren't sure about the sanctions, and the Chinese are very hungry. By the way, they're $1 trillion a year oil customer in Asia. Okay, so there's a lot of people vying for it, including Russia, who's got the Trans-Siberian pipeline. You've got the United States oil companies that now with the Panama Canal have got a direct line there. You've got Canada moving a pipeline to the west that will allow them to load ships on the Pacific side of the Canadian border. And all of a sudden, you know, there's a big rush on to supply this market, and who gets the cookie? But what's confusing for everyone is, what are the rules of the road? What are the game we are playing? We were told the U.S. agreed. U.S. came in, made investments. There was an agreement that was signed by the United States government that said that, you know, the sanctions would be lifted. And our own CIA, by the way, has certified that the agreement as written, no matter how flawed it is, that the Iranians have not cheated. They're on that deal. I don't know if I believe that, but I'm telling you, their own CIA director, the guy who's presently in the White House with President Trump, was the guy who signed off on that. So we're now in a situation where nobody knows where we're going. I mean, what is the shit that is going on here? How does business respond? Now, we have got the Fed raising rates, okay? There's like no discussion about that. And as you're seeing, the rate rise is getting uglier and uglier. And there is a slowdown in business, and mortgage rates are going up, and credit card debt going up, and a lot of problems, okay? A lot of problems. This is real ugliness. Now, you add to that the fact that we've got real questions about trade, real questions about policy. You've got the tax break bonanza for billionaires. You've got businesses that are not willing to invest. And all of a sudden, we're sitting here going, wait, where are we at? And anybody you talk to goes, we don't know. We got a president who's a spaz. He's talking all this shit about what he's going to do with Obamacare, repeal and replace, okay? This is all part of the same pattern of behavior. Where is it we are going? You are the leader. Lead. You keep changing your mind. The last guy in your office gets consensus. You know what happened was, well, world leaders started going to Donald Trump and begging him not to put on the steel and aluminum sanctions, and one by one he's letting everyone out of it. So it's nothing. It's not happening. There's no real sanctions. Now, where we see this going is that this is a pattern of making these big proclamations, achieving a big headline, okay? Big. Kind of like a reality TV show. And then after you make these big proclamations about what you're going to do in sweeping and the headlines, and you get that nasty, there was no collusion, you get that headline out of there, you then back away. You change the deal. Now, right now, the oil market is responding to three things, okay? One is that you've got OPEC and the Russians holding production out of the market. Two, you've got a great fear that Venezuelan oil exports will collapse completely. And three, you've got the fear of Iranian sanctions. Now, behind all those things is Trump, who's a good friend with the Saudis. But he did say that they were manipulating oil price and it was wrong. And, you know, he made, if you remember that another pronouncement, what happened? Nothing. It went there, you know, they said, oh, yeah, they're cheating on the oil price and it's way too high, and just went back about his business. So what is happening is the oil price is basically taking back for the little guy. The little guy is tax break bonanza, right? They've lost it all. They've lost it all right now, okay? Just by what gasoline prices and energy prices are going to go up for them. Now, the heavy guys, the guys who are paying, you know, on the upper middle class, they got no tax break to begin with. So basically, energy policy has now rolled back any advantage for Americans on the working side of the ledger, individuals, taxpayers. Okay, done. Now you've got the confusion about where do we stand on the world scene. Let me explain that. Okay, we got Jimmy Numchucks, who's going to negotiate with the President of the United States. You know, for a minor league player, that's pretty big deal, right? Sitting at the table with the President. Now, the way protocol calls is that normally a man like that with his checkered past and such a small player would not get to see the President. He's going to see a Vice President, or he's going to see some appointee that's going to go there and negotiate with him. So he gave him a great honor. So what did Kim Jong-un do? He goes, well, you got to stop your military exercise before we have a negotiation, or I'm not coming, okay? Now the White House is in a bit of frenzy trying to figure it out. What is Plan B? What is telegraphed exactly what they're saying? More sanctions? Well, you've got as far as you can go with sanctions. If he's calling your bluff, then you're back to that Plan C, which was the military action. And he's not going to do it. So, in essence, Kim Numchucks is in the process of manipulating and backing down the President of the United States. Now, there's a problem with that because everyone else is watching. The Chinese are going, we might be able to stand some sanctions at a trade war with the United States. Let's go for it. And now Iran's going, well, we can go ahead and negotiate with Europe and maybe come to some conclusion with them. Now, all of a sudden, America doesn't have a consensus. We don't have the rest of the world going ahead of it. And by the way, let's get straight. It's very serious business, okay? The Iranian situation is a great big shit mess. There's no doubt about it. Kim Numchucks in North Korea, that's a big shit mess. Venezuela, another big shit mess. So we've got lots of problems in lots of places. There is no discussion about that. The question is, how do you deal with it? Okay, I think the United States is very quick to put on sanctions. Remember, we have sanctions against Russia. So let's see. If we have Russian sanctions, they're still functioning, getting away with it. You've got Venezuelan sanctions. They're not functioning so well, but they are making inroads. You got China sanctions. You got North Korean sanctions. You've got Iranian sanctions. All of a sudden, it could be the Sanctions by America trade group. You know, a whole other. Forget NAFTA and TPP. It's the sanction group. At some point, and many people agree that American prestige is falling dramatically. We are not regarding, and I've heard many leaders say things like, we have to consider the world where America is not the leader, and we have to go ahead and fight for our own country and our own markets because America is no longer a trusted partner. Okay, and that, by the way, that is all as a result of Donald Trump. Sometimes it pays for a mighty country like America to do a bad trade deal, knowing in the future you're going to negotiate a better one, okay? I mean, that's the true art of the deal. And, Donald Trump fancies himself a fantastic negotiator, and I haven't seen any negotiation. He was not able to negotiate the Obamacare repeal. He was not able to negotiate getting the wall. He was not able to negotiate drug prices with Medicare, negotiating directly with drug companies. He was not able so far to negotiate any better trade deal with Mexico or Canada. He has not been negotiating a better deal with China. And all of a sudden, the world's just kind of like falling apart. And you're sitting there going, Donald, buddy, what are you doing? And the reality is, I don't think he really knows. I think from the bottom of my heart, I can tell you, the President of the United States doesn't really know what he's doing. I mean, he understands he wants to negotiate, and he has to understand he wants to put people to his side, but it's not happening, okay? And now, remember, there's one major flaw in Donald Trump that everyone knows about. He loves to be stroked. He has got this enormous ego. Donald Trump said he was sorry, never apologized, never felt he had anything to apologize for, okay? That's a man who doesn't believe he can ever be wrong, and that's kind of dangerous, okay? I can tell you, in business, when you surround yourself with a bunch of yes men, nothing good comes of that, okay? So when you want opinion, you want people to tell you you're screwing up. You got your head up your ass. Here's what you're doing wrong, okay? And a smart leader learns more from criticism than from compliments. So we're now moving down a road where we got all kinds of loose ends all over the place. Now, there's always uncertainty in the world. There's always diversification. There's always change, right? If you can't have flexibility, you can't survive in the world. But this goes beyond that. We are now going into a situation where we're unsettled as we enter a recession. Now, as I've been talking to a lot about lately, there is the last thing Wall Street wants you to hear is recession and wipeout, okay? Never mind deflation. The last thing they want to hear, okay? Stock market's not going in the bear market, not going in the bear market. I have never known Wall Street to ever admit it's a bear market until about 2 years afterwards, okay? And the Federal Reserve indicates it's a recession about 6 months after you're in it. Okay, these guys are not in the business of predicting the markets. They are not in the business of protecting your wealth. They are not in the business of protecting you from a bear market. They're not in the business of protecting you from junk bonds that are wiping out. Wall Street's in the business of protecting itself and enriching you at your expense. Wall Street doesn't want to be regarded as retail. I mean, their job is to take retail's money. Okay, so we're now in a situation where the 100-year bond that they put into your. By the way, you might have it. If you go, you need to check. They'll even tell you. Whole lot of 100-year 7% yielding bonds from Argentina a year ago was packed into the retirement savings of millions of Americans. Along with Venezuela bonds, they didn't tell you that are in forced liquidation, and along with a lot of Puerto Rican bonds that paid a really high price that are now about to default one way or another. Then let's not even talk about what's going on with debt in Mexico. Let's not talk about what emerging market debt. Remember that big, they were screaming about emerging market debt for the past year? So as we go into this recession, now the other horror is that, okay, America's mighty. We can kick ass. We don't have to take shit from anybody. And we got a big swagger. Okay. What about the little guy? What about the guy that's going to get crucified as emerging markets get burned out because their debt becomes unsustainable and payable? Okay. Here the Italians right now are arranging a coalition government that is anti-EU. They want to go back to the Italian lira. The Greeks are making the same sound like that. The Spanish will do it in a minute if the Italians do. You got third world debt that is in negotiation right now with IMF, the kiss of death. You have got interest rates that are skyrocketing on a daily basis as people are saying, what the hell, professionals, why own stocks? Why own companies? I can out-yield a company in U.S. government treasuries, go home at night, and don't have to worry about the knock on the door or your portfolio wiped out. Come to the security and pick up your box and hand in your badge, okay, your identity badge, okay. I've seen that ugly stuff on Wall Street, by the way. They're really brutal when it comes time to getting rid of the stars. You're only as good as your last trade with those guys, and the last trades many people are hitting as we speak. So you got to understand that this is all taking place in a recession. This is all taking place in a business slowdown. This is all taking place in a global rout. Remember, U.S. is on an interest rate rising policy that no one else is. Argentina wants to lower rates, and now they have to raise it. Mexico wants to lower rates. Countries are getting punished for not lowering rates because they're screaming for stimulus. The reality is there's no stimulus left. Okay, that's the deep, dark secret. So what happens? Well, this is where defaults are made out of. In other words, the mechanism that's used by governments from time immemorial was, here's the value of the shit out of your currency, and that takes care of that. The problem in Europe is that you've got a strong currency, and it might be appropriate level for a country like Germany or the Netherlands, but it's sure not appropriate for Italy or Spain or Portugal or Greece, okay? So now what's happening is these countries are revisiting this currency. Now, remember that if you're into emerging market debt and emerging market stocks, you're already losing money on the currency differential, right? The dollar becomes more valuable. Well, those stocks trade in the currency of the emerging market of choice. Africa, some of the big African banks are already broke and making noises they need to bail out. Countries are going tapioca. The key commodity prices they're relying upon are falling in price. And, you got platinum that's just plunging, okay? And that's one of the lead indicators of metals. Coppers and aluminum start softening. Donald Trump's great big bonanza on steel tariffs is again confusing the pricing levels in those markets. So what's happening is in the middle of a recession, in the middle of a worldwide commodity glut, in the middle of vast amounts of oil, there's so much oil that the world's two biggest producers, number 2 and number 3, are literally holding oil off the market to absorb the glut. How long can Russia afford to do that? How long can the Saudis? Okay, you have a price that's artificially posted, not because there is a supply problem, not because of increased demand, because there might be because of sanctions. So in other words, your oil price rise is based on manipulation by the two biggest producers and sanctions against other two key countries, namely Venezuela and Iran. How long does that go on for? How long before that comes unglued? The answer is not very long. So we're in this horror show here of markets that are completely knocked on their ass, that do not have good numbers to trade on, that do not know where the policy is going to be of an administration that is running hog-ass wild. Now remember, you may not consider it a problem, but Donald Trump considers this investigation a problem, and many leaders around the world question if they're negotiating with someone that's not going to be there. And a lot of people are saying, well, maybe we should not get in a hurry. You do have the November elections coming up. If those elections go badly for the Republicans, the House gets a majority of Democrats, this talk of impeachment might become something we have to deal with. And at that point, Donald Trump becomes another powerless president. So do not discount the blow and go, well, the investigation's over, and they can't indict the president of the United States, can't indict him. Sure as shit can impeach him. Sure as shit can compel him. I mean, he already did a fraudulent information. I remember the Stormy Daniels thing. Well, that's getting bigger and bigger. Well, what they're not telling you is that Donald Trump's financial disclosure form, because of the late denials and then the filing of the Stormy thing, has been turned over as part of a criminal investigation. Hannity forgot to tell you that, okay? That was just a form, a piece of paper, line 42. No, this is some big shit, okay? He's got some big problems. And the problems get bigger. Because remember the one thing, you have heard from Hannity, now he's not guilty. You've heard from Fox News there was no collusion. You've heard about the Republicans on the Intelligence Committee that there was no collusion. But you haven't heard from the big kahuna. You haven't heard from the special prosecutor Mueller, and you don't know what he's going to say, okay? You don't know what evidence he has. You know why? He hasn't leaked shit. And there might be a great big shit in the middle of that. There might have been Russian meetings, and there might have been Russian collusion. And let's say he establishes collusion. Let's say he establishes criminal financial activities. Let's suppose he proves that the President of the United States did obstruct justice. Now he dumps that file in the lap of the House, and what do they do with it? Well, if it's so egregious, a lot of the Republicans are just going to say, I had enough of this shit. Let me tell you what the Republicans tell me. I got a problem. I think Donald Trump's a piece of shit like everybody else does. He's making a mess out. We can't work with the guy. We can't get anything done. We have a deal, bring legislation, refuse to sign it. We don't know where we stand. No one does, and everyone's very frustrated. But he's a Republican, He may be a no-good son of a bitch. One guy put it, he said, he is a no-good son of a bitch, but he's our no-good son of a bitch, and we got to deal with it. So it's not going to take much to divide and conquer. In other words, it's not going to be much at some point where they go, okay, you know what? This is done. Party over. We're out of here. Donald, goodbye. And I'm telling you, look this way. Donald Trump's strength among Republicans is certainly not improving on a daily basis. It's getting worse. And Donald Trump has got himself a big ugly shit in brewing, and that is that this trade wars he's starting, the animosity between our former allies, including the Japanese, South Koreans, the Germans, the English, the French, oh my God, the Canadians and the Mexicans, grows by the day. And they feel like they're being held hostage by Donald Trump. And the reality is that, he's doing this shit because he wants a headline. He's doing this to make us look like assholes, okay? Now, you're not dealing with stupid people. Let me say something. There are a lot of very competent world leaders. And there are a lot of very nice economies, okay? And the Chinese miracle was not based on the fact that they took advantage of America. It was based on the fact that they're extremely industrious and hardworking, and they produce more for less, and they're capturing world market share. In other words, they have a huge presence in Europe. They have a huge presence in Australia. They're breaking into all the other Asian markets. I mean, this is not a country to be ignored, and not a country to be trifled with. Now, of course, they had a sweetheart deal, but you got to understand they came from emerging market status. Okay, they came from, a backward communist shithole to now they are producing a world-class society. They're producing world-class products. Do you remember when the product was made in Japan? We all laughed at it. It was a piece of shit. Now Japan went through a long process of cleaning up their quality. Every year, Japanese cars have some of the highest ratings as to quality of any cars in the world. Okay, so these guys know how to get it right. Okay, and what happens is you go as a price point competitor first, and then you establish your markets, you establish your share, and then you up the quality of your brands. Okay, it's a tried and true formula. So do not discount the Japanese ability. By the way, they're a Hawaii cell phone. I got one here. It's got a 15 megapixel Leica camera on it. Okay, far superior to my iPhone. It probably leaks like a sieve, but far superior. So do not walk away and say, oh, it's a piece of shit. It's not the case. Okay, now they're going to ramp up automobile production. What does a Chinese car look like? Well, I'm sure they're going to come. I remember when the Japanese cars came in, and they were the lowest priced tin Lizzie, little pieces of shit that you couldn't fit into because they were designed by a Japanese engineer. Okay, and I remember the Mazda, and that's what really that was a rotary engine. That was what really caused the Japanese to get together. The manufacturers all cooperated up their quality, and now you have the Lexus. Okay, one hell of a car. So you have to understand, and that a lot of their cars, you get award after award, and deservedly so. So they were able to up their game. China's on the same path. Okay, it's not going to be just a trade war; it's going to be a quality war. In other words, let me ask the question this way: if China can produce a car cheaper than America can, of the same quality with the same features, what does the capitalist system say? We should put high duties on it so that the cost advantage isn't there? Or does it say that in the free enterprise system, if it's a fairly priced item not being dumped, then we allow it to occur because it brings competition to the marketplace, right? Well, do you remember all that shit? Did anybody believe that? Or is it like the art of the deal, screw everybody, get Russian money, screw whores, and become president? I mean, exactly how far down the road does this insanity go? At what point do we understand what the principles of competition really are? Putting sanctions is a nice trick, but it doesn't work. Okay, trade sanctions, markets are very dynamic animals, okay? And if you think you're going to protect your home market with sanctions and with tariffs, it doesn't work. The marketplace is smarter than that. The marketplace is faster. So you've got to understand that we're moving into a situation where we're fighting trade wars that we shouldn't be fighting. We're negotiating stupid deals we shouldn't be doing. We are alienating people we shouldn't alienate. We are changing the dynamics of markets with the fear of trade sanctions. We're affecting business at a very time that the world has been overstimulated, at a very time the central banks of the world over have got to pull back that stimulus, at a very time that the U.S. dollar is soaring in value, U.S. interest rates are doing a moonshot, the Fed is going to raise rates over and over and over again, and they don't really give a shit about the economy, although they'll make lip service about it. Let me tell you why. Fed governor, let's be straight here. We know we overstimulated and we screwed up. We know that a recession is coming. And we know rates are too low right now that we have no scope to lower them. So the thing to do is be damned to everything else, get the rates up there to where they're at a correct level, and prepare for the next recession and deal with that as the biggest problem. And I can tell you that deep down inside, in the bowels of the Federal Reserve, they're worried about the next recession, and they're trying to plan for how they approach it and what the Fed fund rate is going to be going into it and how much stimulus they'll be able to provide, because that's their job. So now they understand that. You understand that all this trade shit is going to blow up in their sleazy faces. Okay, all this manipulation and all this blow and go, that's all nice, but it's going to end in disaster. Reality is the marketplace is a pretty mighty, brutal animal. And the marketplace is not going to respond the way Donald Trump wants it to. These half-cocked trade negotiations for a headline, for a president to energize his base for the upcoming elections, like steel great again and aluminum great again, and don't forget everyone wants to crawl in their belly in a coal mine, is total bullshit. This is about playing to the Billy Bob blue-collar base that Donald Trump thinks he needs. Now, we know what the reality is? Everyone else has learned that trick too, and they got to get away with it again. So I'm telling you that these trade deals will end up in disaster. The oil market will collapse, as will gold and silver and copper and platinum. The dollar will soar in value, and interest rates will do a moonshot. The stock market, it's called a bear market for a reason.